All right guys, in today's Tuesday training tip, we're going to be working on 3 crucial karate kicks: the front, side, and rear thrust. Let's get going. All right, so first up is the front thrust kick. This is one of the first kicks that we work on in our karate class, and it's a kick that's used very similarly in a lot of other different styles. So the way we're going to do this, first of all, we need to set our base. A thrust kick is a power kick. If we're off balance, we lose a lot of that power. We don't want that. We want to drive as much force into our target as we can. When I go to throw my front thrust kick, first thing you need to do is bring my knee up in front of me. If I don't get that knee up and I just swing my leg straight up, I'm going to end up hitting with my toes, or I'm going to hit a target way down here. I'm not going to hit what I'm trying to aim for. So that knee comes up nice and high. Once that knee comes up, I want to push my leg and my hips forward into that kick. The big thing a lot of people do with front thrust is they lean their shoulders forward instead. So they're kicking more this way and the hips are back. And when you're doing that, number one, that takes more flexibility in the back of your leg. So if you're not very flexible, your kick is going to be down there. Number two, it forces our hands down and our head in range of someone to hit us back. And number three, if I miss my target, now I'm heavy stumbling forward. We don't want that. We want to keep our weight over our standing foot here and make sure that our hips are driving in. My shoulders go back a little bit. Our hips are a lot more powerful than our leg on its own. So if we combine that with the push of our foot, we get a lot more power into it. So the difference, if I use leg only, that's not bad. And again, you notice I kind of slip and lose my balance there at the end. Versus if I drive hips in, I can push the bag a lot further, and I keep my balance. I'm not kicking and then stumbling heavy down to the floor. All right, number two, a classic in point sparring and all kinds of different applications is the side thrust kick. So the side thrust kick is interesting because a lot of people mix it with the roundhouse kick, and there is a lot of overlap. But there's one thing that's exactly the same in a side thrust kick and a roundhouse kick, and that is the pivoting of our standing foot, but for different purposes. For a roundhouse kick, we pivot our standing foot to create power because a roundhouse kick is rotational. It's coming from our core twisting, hips going sideways as I throw it. The reason we rotate our foot in a side thrust kick is for balance. Think about it. If you're balancing on one foot like you have to do for any kick, and you get pushed from the side standing normally, you roll right over your ankle, right over the side of your foot, and you fall down. But if this foot is turned out sideways with this knee up, now my toes act as a little bit of a reinforcement to prevent me from falling down. And I can drive my toes into the floor to make sure I don't fall, and I can very easily hop to the side if I need to keep my balance. So that's what we need to do on our side thrust. Step one is the same as the front thrust. Knee comes up. But then, as I go to push, you notice I already kind of did it as I was bringing my knee up because I'm used to doing it that way. But especially as that kick goes out there, I need my heel to turn and point towards my target. And then, very similar to a roundhouse kick, I am going to pop my hips into it a little bit. I'm not twisting as much as I would for a roundhouse because, again, I'm not trying to generate force in this direction. I'm trying to generate it that way. The reason we turn our hip out is so we can use our glutes to do this. Again, a bigger muscle, as opposed to if I'm just right here and I'm just extending and just kind of using my quad to push out. This is not really a side thrust kick. This is more of like kind of like a snap kick. So when I go to do that side thrust all together, my knee comes up, I rotate, and again, I pop that hip out so that it's the back of my leg here doing all the work. Boom, pushing into the target. Again, I bring that knee up. One other thing you can do if needed, you notice I did a little bit, you can slide a bit forward on this standing foot as well. This works especially well if you're like just a little bit out of range, or I can't quite get good contact. As I bring that knee up, just a little tiny shuffle forward. Not big enough where you're gonna lose your balance and fall. One last time, hands are up, knee comes up, throw that side thrust kick. All right, so our final thrust kick is the rear thrust kick, kicking behind us. Most important thing anytime we do a technique behind us, a strike or a kick or otherwise, we need to look behind us so we know where our target is. Number one, for practice, we want to just make sure we hit the bag so we don't fall down and get hurt. But number two, if I were really using this to defend myself, I want to try to make sure my technique lands. I don't want to throw it blindly and end up missing, and then I just wasted energy throwing something that didn't really have a shot at connecting. So we're going to look over our shoulder first. With our hands, we don't need to bring our hands way back here. We want to bring them up a little bit. Just in case other person's coming at us, we can protect our head here. When I go to throw that rear thrust kick, I personally like to take a little bit of a step into it with my opposite one. Just like for our roundhouse kick, how we can kind of step forward into it. For the rear thrust, I like to take a little step back, but you don't have to. You can do it right from here. When it comes to actually throwing the kick, we want this knee to come up, and we want to drive this leg straight back. We don't want to turn our hips. Everyone always turns a rear thrust into a side thrust because they over-rotate to try and see the target, and now it becomes a little bit more of a side kick, or in extreme cases, even more like a front kick. So we don't want that to happen. Keep your hips square. And instead of rotating your hips into it, when we go to throw that kick, we want to push our hips back into it, just a little bit. Not to where we're leaning forward either. That's also too extreme for the technique, okay? So again, I'm looking over my shoulder, hands are up protecting. If you want to take a step into it, go ahead. But when I go to kick, knee comes up, bottom of my foot drives back. And again, I don't turn my hips, I keep them square as I push into the bag. Push, push, every time. One other important thing when we go to kick, we want to be careful not to just poke it with our toes like this. If my foot is pointed back too far where I hit with just my toes, I might hurt myself. I need to get the bottom of my foot contacting the bag. Your heel is best for any thrust kick, front, side, or rear. But if you can't get your heel on the bag, some people maybe aren't as flexible in the back of their leg here and they can't get that heel, you need to at least make sure the ball of your foot hits. Toe, gonna hurt yourself almost every time. So one last time, looking over my shoulder, hands are up, step into it if you'd like to, and then drive that kick straight back, nice and hard. All right guys, so those are our 3 different thrust kicks that we use in karate. Again, we use very similar techniques in Krav, Muay Thai, and kickboxing as well. But practice them, give them your best shot. As always, make sure you practice carefully so you don't hurt yourself. And anytime you've got questions, let an instructor know when you're in class. We're always glad to help you out.